At the dawn of the 15th century, the Ottoman Empire appeared unstoppable. Its armies had secured much of the Balkans, defeated major European coalitions, and tightened control over Anatolia. Sultan Bayezid I, known for his speed and ambition, ruled an empire that seemed poised to dominate both East and West. Yet this momentum would be violently disrupted by the arrival of a far greater force from Central Asia. The invasion of Timur, often known in the West as Tamerlane, marked one of the most dramatic crises in Ottoman history. Timur was not merely another rival ruler. He was a seasoned conqueror who had crushed armies across Persia, Central Asia, and India. His empire was built on relentless warfare, psychological terror, and strategic brilliance. When Timur turned his attention toward Anatolia, the Ottomans faced an adversary unlike any they had encountered before. Tensions between the two powers had been building for years. Bayezid's rapid expansion in Anatolia brought him into conflict with local Turkic rulers who had previously acknowledged Timur's authority. Many of these displaced leaders sought Timur's protection, framing Bayezid as an aggressor. Diplomatic exchanges between the two rulers quickly deteriorated into open hostility. In 1402, the confrontation reached its climax near Ankara. Bayezid, confident in his army's strength and recent victories, rushed to face Timur without fully consolidating his forces. This haste would prove disastrous. Timur, by contrast, arrived with a battle-hardened army, skilled in mobility, deception, and steppe warfare. The Battle of Ankara exposed deep structural weaknesses within the Ottoman military. Bayezid's army included contingents from recently conquered Anatolian territories, whose loyalty was uncertain. During the battle, several of these troops defected or withdrew, undermining Ottoman cohesion at a critical moment. Timur exploited this fracture with devastating efficiency. Timur's forces encircled the Ottoman army, cutting off supplies and escape routes. Superior cavalry tactics and battlefield coordination overwhelmed Bayezid's troops. By the end of the day, the once invincible Ottoman army lay in ruins. Sultan Bayezid himself was captured, a humiliation unprecedented in Ottoman history. The capture of the Sultan sent shockwaves throughout the empire. Authority in the Ottoman system was deeply personal, centered on the ruler's presence and command. With Bayezid imprisoned and later dying in captivity, the empire was suddenly without a unifying figure. What followed was a period of chaos known as the Ottoman Interregnum. Bayezid's sons each claimed the throne, plunging the empire into civil war. From 1402 to 1413, rival princes fought for control over territories in both Anatolia and the Balkans. Provincial governors shifted loyalties, foreign powers intervened, and central authority effectively collapsed. European states seized the opportunity. Territories previously conquered by the Ottomans regained independence or autonomy. Tribute payments stopped, and Ottoman pressure on Europe temporarily eased. The image of Ottoman invincibility was shattered. In Anatolia, fragmentation was even more severe. Former beyliks re-emerged, reclaiming lands lost to Bayezid. Timur, rather than occupying Ottoman territory permanently, deliberately encouraged this division. His strategy was not to rule Anatolia directly, but to ensure that no single power could quickly dominate the region. The empire's administrative weaknesses became clear. The lack of a clear succession system turned defeat into prolonged instability. Institutions that had functioned effectively during expansion proved fragile in crisis. Loyalty, once secured through conquest and reward, became negotiable. Yet the story did not end in collapse. The Ottoman state, though fractured, retained important advantages. Its administrative experience, military traditions, and control over key Balkan territories provided a foundation for recovery. Gradually, one prince emerged as dominant. In 1413, Mehmed the Wern succeeded in reunifying the empire. Through diplomacy, military force, and strategic patience, he defeated his rivals and restored central authority. The Ottoman state survived not because it avoided disaster, but because it adapted to it. The legacy of Timur's invasion left a lasting mark. Ottoman rulers became more cautious in Anatolia, wary of overextension and internal disunity. Greater emphasis was placed on central control, loyalty, and succession planning. The trauma of Ankara became a lesson etched into imperial memory. The defeat also reshaped Ottoman identity. Expansion would continue, but with renewed awareness of vulnerability. Power could be lost as quickly as it was gained. Military strength without political cohesion was insufficient. Timur's invasion stands as the closest the early Ottoman Empire came to total destruction. It revealed the limits of conquest-driven authority and the dangers of internal division. Yet it also demonstrated resilience. From the ashes of defeat and civil war, the Ottomans rebuilt their state and resumed their rise. In historical perspective, Ankara was not the end of the Ottoman Empire, but a warning. It showed that even the most powerful empires could fracture under pressure. Survival depended not on invincibility, but on the ability to recover, reform, and reassert control in a hostile world. In 1876, the Ottoman Empire entered a period of profound political and social transformation. The deposition of Sultan Abdul Aziz and the brief experiment with constitutional governance had exposed the empire to both opportunity and instability. Amid this uncertainty, Abdul Hamid II ascended to the throne, initially viewed as a potentially reform-minded ruler capable of navigating the empire through a turbulent period. However, the promise of constitutionalism would soon give way to autocracy, as the young sultan faced mounting internal dissent, nationalist movements, and external pressures from European powers. Abdul Hamid II's approach to governance was characterized by a deliberate consolidation of power. Within 2 years of assuming the throne, he suspended the Ottoman Constitution of 1876, dissolved parliament, and established an autocratic regime that would endure for over 3 decades. This decision reflected both personal ambition and a strategic response to the empire's complex challenges. By concentrating authority in the Sultanate, Abdul Hamid sought to maintain control over a diverse and fractious population, while countering the rising tide of nationalist and reformist movements that threatened the cohesion of the state. Central to Abdul Hamid's vision was the promotion of pan-Islamism, a political and ideological framework designed to unify the empire's Muslim population. By emphasizing the Sultan's role as caliph of all Muslims, he sought to foster loyalty among subjects spanning the Balkans, Anatolia, the Arab lands, and Central Asia. This policy was not merely symbolic. It was supported by a series of practical initiatives, including investments in education, religious institutions, and public infrastructure designed to connect the Muslim heartlands of the empire. Pan-Islamism also served as a counterbalance to European encroachment, providing a unifying narrative at a time when the empire's territorial and political integrity was increasingly under threat. One of Abdul Hamid's most ambitious infrastructure projects was the construction of the Hijaz Railway, linking Damascus to Medina. This railway was intended to facilitate the annual Hajj pilgrimage, improve administrative control over the Arabian provinces, and strengthen connections between the Ottoman core and its distant territories. Alongside the railway, a telegraph network was expanded, enabling rapid communication across the vast empire. These technological investments reflected Abdul Hamid's recognition that modernization and centralization were essential to sustaining imperial authority, even as he maintained an autocratic political framework. Yet despite these achievements, the empire faced persistent unrest in key regions. The Balkans in particular became a center of nationalist agitation. Christian populations, inspired by nationalist movements elsewhere in Europe, increasingly resisted Ottoman authority. Revolts erupted in Serbia, Montenegro, Bulgaria, and other Balkan territories, often met with harsh military suppression. In the eastern provinces, tensions between Armenians and the central government intensified, fueled by both local grievances and international concern for minority rights. These conflicts highlighted the limitations of Abdul Hamid's pan-Islamic strategy, as efforts to unify Muslim subjects did little to placate non-Muslim populations seeking autonomy or protection. The Russo-Turkish War of 1877–78 represented a major turning point in Abdul Hamid's reign. Russia, positioning itself as the protector of Orthodox Christian populations in the Balkans, launched a campaign against the Ottoman Empire that resulted in a devastating military defeat. Ottoman forces were pushed back on multiple fronts, with Russian troops advancing deep into the Balkans and threatening strategic regions near Istanbul. The war exposed weaknesses in the empire's military infrastructure and strategic planning, revealing the challenges of defending a sprawling, multi-ethnic state against a determined European power. The subsequent Treaty of San Stefano initially granted significant territorial concessions to Russia and established a large autonomous Bulgarian principality. However, the treaty alarmed other European powers, particularly Britain and Austria-Hungary, who feared Russian dominance in the region. The Congress of Berlin later revised the treaty, reducing Russian gains and creating a more balanced distribution of power in the Balkans. Nevertheless, the Ottoman Empire suffered substantial territorial losses, marking a critical moment in the decline of its European holdings. These setbacks not only weakened the empire geopolitically, but also contributed to a profound sense of vulnerability within its leadership and population. The territorial losses precipitated a major refugee crisis. Large numbers of Muslim populations, including Circassians, Bosniaks, Albanians, and Crimean Tatars, were displaced from the Balkans and other lost territories, fleeing into remaining Ottoman lands in Anatolia and parts of the empire's European holdings. These migrations created new demographic pressures, straining resources and complicating governance. While the refugees contributed to the empire's labor force and economic potential, their arrival also heightened tensions in already unstable regions, creating challenges for social cohesion and administrative control. Abdulhamid's government faced the daunting task of integrating these displaced populations while maintaining order and asserting authority over diverse provinces. Internally, Abdulhamid's autocratic rule relied on extensive surveillance and censorship to suppress dissent. A network of spies and informants monitored political activity, ensuring that opposition movements could be identified and neutralized. Educational reforms in state-supported institutions were carefully managed to align with the Sultan's ideological vision, promoting loyalty to the throne and the principles of pan-Islamism. Although this centralized control maintained a degree of stability, it also fostered resentment among the empire's educated elite, who viewed restrictions on political participation and civil liberties as antithetical to modernization and progress. Despite these challenges, Abdulhamid II invested in public works and modernization projects, including schools, hospitals, and scientific institutions. His reign saw improvements in healthcare, education, and infrastructure, reflecting a recognition that governance required both authority and administrative competence. These initiatives, while constrained by autocratic oversight, demonstrated the Sultan's pragmatic approach, using modernization and technological development